Are we good? I think so. All right. I think it's time to start. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Totally excited to have this conversation. And everyone, Happy New Year. Let's hope this new year is better than the last year. My name is Janine Yancey. For those of you who don't know, I'm the founder and CEO of M-Train. And totally excited to have this conversation really about the newest changes to the California harassment training regulation with Branden Butler, who is the Assistant Deputy Director. Do we still have Branden? Okay. Branden, are we still there? Did we lose Branden? Maybe, John, you could... Branden's rejoining us. Okay. So now I'm really excited to have Branden join us. So Branden is the Assistant Deputy Director of for Education, Outreach and Education of the California Department of Fair Employment and Housing Department. Branden, so excited to have you.
Yeah, I disappeared. I'm glad I'm here. Yes, I don't know what happened. I had to enter the green room. But hello, everyone. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Yes, no, Branden, totally excited to have you. Branden is generally responsible for outreach and education to California community, both employers and employees, on the regulations and what the regulations required. And Branden, I'm so excited that you could join us because, as you know, M-Train, kind of requested in September for the Fair Employment Housing Council to make a change because, frankly, and this was not even us, this was some of our clients that we work with that are multi-state employers and actually trying to be the really good employers and do things the most appropriate way. And they're complying with New York's regs. They're complying with Illinois' regs. They've been complying for 15 years now with California regs. And I think what people were not seeing is if you actually are focused on doing like a really good, strong, kind of, rich program, the operational difficulties have been starting to get in the way. And so I kind of knocked on the door and said, hey, hello, folks. There are some employers out here that are actually trying to do like a really good job and they need a little flexibility. So maybe I want you and I to cover a few things, Branden, but maybe you can talk about that amendment that the Fair Employment and Housing Council made that went into effect January 1st, just a few days ago, and the flexibility that allows.
Well, thank you, Janine. I mean, yes, we're real happy that you prompted the council and M-Train prompted the Fair Employment and Housing Council, which promulgates the regulations of our laws. So this is a body that's appointed by the governor, and they promulgate regulations. And at our September meeting, where the regulations were being discussed, the regulations to clarify the rules around the sexual harassment prevention training, you did a wonderful job by being, an expert witness and kind of discussing this issue that, you have everyone doing trainings all around the country, and and if there could be a way to clarify that you don't have to do, the 120 minutes, all in one sitting, but this could be broken up in a portion, which had been in the regs but really wasn't clarified, and I think people had not thought of. But it was really helpful that you brought this up, and now the regulations have been clarified to make clear that you can take the training in shorter segments so long as you comply with the deadline. But now, as we enter this new time frame of sexual harassment training, now that everyone's complied, this is really helpful, I think, because it can allow this ongoing training to happen as opposed to a one-off. Every couple of years, it can really start to build a curriculum environment, and not only if this prompted the hour and an hour training for managers or 30 and 34 line staff, but could also open the door to other ways to train and bring more awareness to employees and supervisors in California. So, yes, I think what you've really proposed and was taken by the council to add that clarification is super helpful. So, again, as a practical matter, you can do the 60-minute program, and then, you can do a different a 60-minute program for managers in year 2. You got to cover all the same content that's required, but you can really now allow a little more flexibility and can hit different points and can mix it up a little bit more by, and I think also include more engagement. So instead of just taking the hour or doing 2 hours at once and then trying to talk about this, it also allows, I think, for more engagement. So this is, I think, a real helpful clarification for employers, and I think you're raising this really help prompt it. So I hope it carries on and allows maybe for more clarity and harmony among training, not only for all employers who have operations around the country. So
thank you so much, Branden. And so just to kind of recap, given the amendment and the flexibility that it affords, employers, particularly multi-state employers who are training people throughout the country, can do 60 minutes every year for managers, 30 minutes every year for line staff, but the content has to be different content. So meaning, don't want to have unintended consequences where people are looking for shortcuts and they just do the same 60-minute program year after year. That doesn't work. Just saying that, frankly, to M-Train clients. Hey, M-Train clients, I already can see some of the questions. No. It's got to be different 60 minutes, in 2021, and then a different set of 60 minutes in 2022. Never fear, M-Train will be coming out shortly in the next another week or two with like your suggested training plan. But I think in this way, and Branden, thank you so much for your team for kind of understanding and embracing really kind of the environment that would allow employers to integrate this into basically operationalize it and make it part of their culture.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly on point. I mean, I think the goal of the laws and the regulations is really to ensure, we want to ensure that there's some flexibility, so that, the employers, you can create, one training program that works, for your entire workforce. And so, you're bringing up this point around some of the time requirements and, having employees in different states and causing this kind of being very difficult and to manage and financially difficult, that, creating kind of a unified kind of culture that kind of supports, all of this at once is kind of helpful for everyone, not only in creating the culture development that we want employers to provide to employees, but also making this with enough flexibility to actually manage, so we, at the state, want to ensure that we're supporting, learning and, creating the, behavior change, create the respectful workplace and develop those, new habits and skills to really look at it as that. Yeah. And so, incorporating harassment prevention into an annual, integrated, workplace culture training, I think is appealing, that it's not just, the only thing to be thinking about when we think about, creating because that's something we've embraced in our training, that it's harassment prevention training, but it's also about creating the workplace that we all want to work in. And so it also has to hit upon some of these other issues that are really important, that, we say abusive conduct and things like this, but we're really talking about that behavior. And how do we train that? How do we teach it so that we have that respectful workplace? So I think, this amendment change kind of goes into that overall goal, so it can be part of a curriculum or kind of training cadence, so to speak.
Thank you so much, Branden. That's super helpful. I want to kind of pick up on some of the things that you said and kind of tease it out a little bit, Branden, because from a practical matter, everyone on the line is looking at you as, oh gosh, there's Branden, the government watchdog. He's Mr. Regulator. And I want to talk a little bit, because I think that we're at the right place and the right time to educate people that in some ways, I think creating laws around these issues has unintended consequences. I'll put it that way. Like I've been saying for at least a decade now, that laws follow people, people don't follow laws. And everyone kind of scratches their head and they're like, Janine, you're crazy. What do you mean by that? And what I mean by that is, and I want to kind of have this conversation a little bit with you, Branden, is when social issues get to the point that they're so impactful and they're causing so much damage, well, then guess what? Bada bing, bada boom, we get a law. And then what happens is everyone gets like very myopic, very tunnel vision, and they look at the law and they solve for the law. They don't solve for the problem that actually triggered the need for the law. Yeah. And I've been so frustrated for basically my whole professional career, but I don't want to give you the years of that, but because we've had a whole society of employers, they're solving for the law, not for the problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I want to talk a little bit and get your kind of thoughts, Branden, on, I talk to employers all the time. We're like, well, harassment's like obvious. It's I've got my policy. It's got just text. It says, don't engage in any conduct based on protected characteristics that's unwelcome. What does that even mean? And I think that the problem in our marketplace and with employers in particular is they think that these are so obvious, these issues, and they're not.
Yeah. No, I think you're 100% right, Janine, on this point. I mean, a couple of points to take with that. I think you're right. We are in a time where there is now more awareness of civil rights and harassment in the workplace. And I think, we've seen that correlated increase to complaints. But I think it's also, fair to say that when we're dealing with so many, the root issue is not necessarily that there was just, a few bad people and we just have to figure it out. But I think it's really more of, like you discussed, that, what is the problem? And it's a workplace cultural problem that requires training and ongoing training and awareness to really overcome that, because these are the issues that are happening outside of the office doors, or the issues that are happening inside the office doors. Yeah. And so this ongoing need to train and teach this skill, I think, is so key, because you're right. Hey, here's a policy, here's a this. That's not creating the environment, just those acts alone, where someone may feel that they could come forward if they were a victim of harassment. It's also not creating the place where people can identify or be a bystander, or, kind of overall making the environment so that's not even tolerated. So I think right. that, you're right that, training is one facet, and, the required state program is one facet, but it really goes much further than that. Yeah. To really get to where we want, right? There's not a law covering every aspect of training, but certainly, and we reflect that at DFEH, that this is the starting place. Right. Just, requiring the required state training on harassment prevention, abusive conduct, but it goes a lot further to really create the workplace culture where we all want to work in, and that can integrates and respects our diverse society. So, I think, you've really hit it on the point, which is, one-off training isn't going to do it. It's really an ongoing discussion to really move the needle. So we always hope that employers will do that, but that is not necessarily a requirement of the state to do more than this. But I think that's the aspirational hope, is that this is part of our employment world today, of ongoing training to create the right behaviors and recognize not only just harassment, but abusive conduct, how to prevent. All of those facets we could break down, and I know as M-Train does, in whole little modules that need to be handled. So there's a lot here, but I agree with you that it's a much deeper than just this policy or just this training will solve it. It's a much deeper issue, and it's really going to take the energy and creativity of places like M-Train and employers to really embrace that.
So thank you, Branden. And I think one thing that I also want to kind of nuance out is, and I don't think this is, obvious, but, my version of disrespectful conduct is going to be different than your version. It's going to be different than John Weiss's version, because we all have different, our life experience informs what is appropriate and what's not. So different generations are going to have different, understandings, different races, different cultural backgrounds. So you've got the diversity of our workforce basically makes arriving at a common shared understanding more difficult. And I think that's part of the turbulence that as a society we are navigating today. And then that flows right into harassment, because again, if you've got, somebody who their professional career started before, a lot of this was, well understood common knowledge, and they had to navigate some pretty hairy professional situations, their skin might be a whole lot tougher than someone who's not had to do that. And so I think that part of the understanding on this needs to, for company stakeholders, needs to be our diversity of our society is actually making these issues more complex, more complicated. And so, we need to kind of take that into account. I don't think everyone does.
Yeah, no, I think you're correct on this, and I think that it can be a tricky issue, because when you look at just harassment, it's always very difficult to outside of the existing case law or standards we have, really understanding exactly the objective standard of what is harassment, unless we are in fact litigating a claim where a jury makes a finding of yes this was harassment. So it's always a constant navigation for employers of trying to understand what everything is. When is this harassment? When is it not? And I think we all understand that. Yes, there's some kind of spectrum, and I know M-Train has really been good about creating these kind of spectrums of understanding conduct, because it is hard to judge. So I think that it's a help that's a helpful tool, and I think for all of us to think about a spectrum of conduct. But again, unless you're doing ongoing training, it's really hard to always know what that is, and
right.
where when it is at all. So I think this is a hard subject. I mean, just even from for the HR folks, employer folks, but who are doing investigations, this is challenging. It is not easy. Many folks, this is a whole career, and so I think one way to kind of influence that how difficult this is to embrace training and get everyone up to speed on creating the workplace we all want to work in, because this is a difficult subject. It's difficult to understand. It can be everyone has a different standard, but there are some legal standards, of course, that are kind of the bottom line, but that's way down the line, right, when you're there, and you don't want to be there. So I think a lot goes to how do we create this workplace and the ongoing training and ways to view it too, right? It's not just a training, but it's what you obtain from the training, how you think about the concepts. So yeah, I would agree with you on that point.
How you change behavior. So I want to ask you in a second about kind of best practices moving forward. But before we go there, I want to tease out, because I don't think this is easy. I don't think this is an easy concept for practitioners to grasp, that per the law, unwelcome conduct has both a subjective and an objective standard. So subjective is, does the person complaining find it unwelcome, and does, basically, would any reasonable person, find it unwelcome? But what that really means is a jury of your peers. And so just picking up on your comment, Branden, to have actually a truly objective standard without a shared language means you got to litigate something, and that's going to change over time. So for example, Ellen Powell had a, pretty well-known lawsuit in 2015. I happened to go to that jury trial, I think most every day. It was about 3 weeks. And I actually feel pretty darn confident that a jury in 2021 would come out with a different decision than the jury in 2015. And I point that out because social values are changing, right? And so that then tees up this need, because as a practical matter, organizations don't want to leave everything to juries to decide. That's silly. You need to have a shared language. So John, I'm going to ask you, if you don't mind, if you've got something teed up, just to show the workplace color spectrum for people, or maybe put it out in the chat if that's not available, just so people can see. At M-Train, we have developed a proprietary kind of shared language, which works quite well. And it's just color code conduct, not people, right? Because, the other component is, and I've seen this over the years in my professional experience, as soon as you've got somebody who lobs out the term, oh, so-and-so is harassing me, the ears close down, the person takes it completely emotionally and defensively, and you're not able to actually move forward and achieve common ground and common understanding. And so, what we certainly recommend with all of our clients is, hey, everyone, use this, workplace color spectrum and just say, hey, that's kind of orange, meaning the behavior is referencing a protected characteristic, and just chill, stop. Before it gets bad, and everyone just kind of says, oh, orange. Okay. Orange doesn't make you feel like you're some bad, evil person. And it just immediately course corrects. So John will be putting that out in the chat for everyone to see. And certainly if people want it, it's a poster on our website. So people could go to the mtrain.com website, and I think it's under resources, and get that poster and just download it. We've got plenty of organizations that are actually operationalizing that in their onboarding, in their annual kind of events to use. So that's that. Branden, I wanted to ask you about best practices. So I think, and let me just kind of set the context for this, because you've been saying the regulations are really a starting point, and so that's a minimum. You're phoning it in. That's the minimum necessary. I would add to that Gen Z coming into the workforce, Gen Z are going to hold everyone accountable, as they should, because they've grown up with seeing the inequities and really wanting to change, which is great. So as employers, in order to be able to recruit and retain top talent, your talent's going to force you to do the right thing. So it's not just the law, it's your talent and the marketplace. And we just saw Google. So Google's talent is forcing them to do the right thing. They unionized. That will happen. Unions seem to die out in the 90s, but let me tell you, they're coming back. So in order to be strategic, because I'm telling you, as an HR leader these days, pressure's on you. Pressure is on you to be, because these are gnarly days. Let me just put it that way. And so this is not the time for the faint of heart or people who are not strategic. So time to be strategic, and your culture training, your harassment training is a component of being strategic. And so with that as my kind of loaded context, Branden, what are some of your best practices?
Well, it's a great tee up. And, before I answer that, I'll just say, looking at our last annual report from 2018 to 2019, which is our latest data to show us what are the level of complaints coming in. When we look at, sexual harassment, just between right to sue letters, right, which is folks who are bypassing DFEH, going directly to court and are asking for the right to sue letter to exhaust their administrative remedy. Just in from 2018 to 2019, there was over 1,000 more right to sue letters for sexual harassment. Now, that could say a lot of things, right? Because even data has found that as folks become more aware, more trained, there can even be a rise in complaints, because the workplace can be a place where they feel safe to make these right. complaints. But nonetheless, I think what it does tell us, no matter which way you look at it, is whether Gen Z or more awareness or social issues, what have you, that it has arrived. And so having a plan to kind of march to the times, but to be aware and to be be learned, so to speak. You want to have integrated effective harassment prevention training. Mm-hmm. And we know from data that it has to start at the executive leadership. Yeah, right? You can't do this and you never see the executive leadership. They're not there. They're not part of it. Rolling in, late. This has to be seen as a core value that's taken, very seriously. And executives have to be a part of the training. And we know this. This is stuff the EEOC everyone's looked at, and really need to be part of the training and the curriculum that is created, because it does send that message that this is a priority of the work of the employer. And so then, after you do that, it's really kind of ensuring that overall there's a value set, so that the training becomes a component of culture and development, that everyone expects that this is a part of working for this employer, that there's going to be ongoing training that's going to cover the required law of harassment prevention, training, abusive conduct, but also branches out, because you're trying to create that workplace of behavior change, of respect, and that's where when we see the measurements, when we see the data, that's where you have that climate and it goes down. So again, from just I don't say common sense, but to have an effective harassment prevention training program to ensure that everyone at your company is having that respectful workplace. It starts with ongoing training, and I think the early data we know of is measuring that. I think as the years go on, we'll learn more. I know M-Train is doing work with that, but I think that's going to be one of the kind of key pivotal moments when we look at the resurgence of harassment prevention training post Me Too. Looking at, well, where did it go? Where was it just a one-off for some folks and that was that? Or did some employers embrace it as a cultural change? And what were the impacts going down the line? I think we'll see that there will be a strong impact of creating a better climate and behavior change among staff.
Oh, awesome. Excellent. Thank you. I mean, I totally agree, Branden. And I think your comment of, is it just a one-off, or did the employer embrace it as part of their culture, as reflected by that CEO? It really has to be the top person saying, this is a huge priority, and here's how it connects to our core values, right? Yeah, so that's just super clear. I'll just add a few more other things, and this is just based on our experiences over the years, really, here at M-Train working with clients. I think modern consumable content. So, I mean, I would say optimize for the employee experience, not for, the law, right? Like, yes, you're gonna meet the legal requirements, but your experience should be optimized for education of your employees, not for the stakeholders. Mm-hmm. Sounds common sense. You wouldn't believe how many people miss that. Number two, you got to have a shared language. Because my versions of harassment is different than yours, and it's different than the third person's, right? So what's tolerant for me is not tolerant for others. And so you need to have a shared language so people can course correct in real time. Three, enable peer-to-peer learning. Yeah. So, and this is referenced in the regs of got to have discussion on this. And that's more than just this top-down, one and done, here's a data dump. Mm-hmm. Memorize the policy and you're good to go. That is so naive. It's got to be some peer-to-peer learning and exchanges. Mm-hmm. And then lastly, I think in order, we've been talking about this a little bit, Branden, about data, and lastly, the data, you can't change what you don't measure. I mean, it's simple enough. And the data is not just completion, who's completed, that's just basic. And the data's got to be, and I'm sure we do this. It's identify those behaviors that just as common sense practitioners know lead to disrespect. Managers who don't know the implications of their power, in-group, out-group dynamics, who are the cool kids on the high school quad? I mean, that's really no different than what happens in the workplace. Yeah. As practitioners, we all know this. Let's be intentional about it. Let's identify it, and let's start to pulse and measure it, and then start to, proactively remedy these situations before they, turn into big brouhahas.
Yes, no, totally on board, and really, we think we've hit, the first three, kind of points you laid out, but I think certainly the attention to, what's causing the disrespectful, behavior, the in-group, out-group dynamics. I think that's just such an important component that really blends into the abusive conduct and leads to the harassment. And that's just kind of another, fork of the tree, so to speak, that really I think is so important as a best practice to be addressing them.
Yeah, so Branden, maybe I'm going to be writing this up. Maybe I share it with you, and you and I could kind of pull this together and come out with a shared best practices. But I'll send this your way. But just for folks listening in, the goal is to send out kind of a best practices document, make it available at least on our website. So if folks are interested in it, go ahead and register as a kind of a user on our website. I think we have that ability just so that you get updated on all the latest and greatest resources and blog posts and such. But I think that might be a helpful kind of resource for people moving forward. Super. Branden, any kind of concluding thoughts and kind of predictions for what 2021 will hold?
Well, just again, want to thank you, Janine, and M-Train and your staff, John, for inviting DFEH here, and also to thank M-Train for allowing us to use one of your training videos in our harassment prevention training program that we've put out. So always many thanks to M-Train. And just concluding thoughts would be, as you pointed out, the requirements under the law are certainly very important, but what's not in the law and is, I think, embraced in the regulations is that, and we've talked about here today, is that really creating an environment of respect through ongoing training is something to be embraced and encouraged, because this is where we really will make the change so that the workplace, I always say, and I told you, Gene, I hope we will reach that point where one day these goals will be so integrated in our workplace that like in the future, I hate to say it, but probably a long time from now, it'll be second nature.
Right.
We're not there yet, but hopefully one day.
It's a lot like wearing a seatbelt, Branden.
Yeah.
No one thinks twice about wearing a seatbelt. It's good for all of us, but same type of thing,
Yep. So true. Well, but thank you though, and I appreciate the conversation, and look forward to connecting down the road for sure.
Same here, Branden. Thank you so much. Totally appreciate it. And I know our audience does as well. And thanks for everything you do at the DFEH. We certainly appreciate it. All right.
My pleasure.
Bye, everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.